2 tablets of stones, the 10 commandments of God. Then God says through the book of Exodus that he was supposed to build on top of the mercy seat 2 cherubims, right? Spreading or taking their wings up high, right? And then they were supposed to their wings are supposed to touch each other. Their faces are supposed to face towards each other, but their faces are supposed to look down towards the mercy seat, right? And what was that for? In the book of Hebrews chapter 9 it says, and overlay it the cherubims of glory, shadowing the mercy seat. So here we acknowledge that the cherubims, they were actually overlaying the mercy seat, right? Now the cherubims were spreading up their wings, touching each other, but inside or in between the cherubims there was something that's of critical importance, something that's splendid. Here's an image that portrays the Ark of the Covenant, complete, exactly when we've asked the Bible, exactly as it is, right? We acknowledge the Ark, the box, right? We've acknowledged the mercy seat, and from one end to another end, 2 cherubims facing towards each other, their wings up, right? Their faces towards the mercy seat. That was the covering. But in between, right, inside or in between, there was something that was of critical importance. Let's move now on our graphic, or our image portrays when you would enter into the most holy place, you'd actually acknowledge the Ark of the Covenant, which was compiled by the things that the Bible actually told us now. Right? Now, the mercy seat, right, the cherubims, they had something inside. It was what we called the Shekinah glory. It was light out of or in between the cherubims. There was much light that came out, right? And this light, it was a powerful light that when a high priest would enter into the most holy place, there was brightness. And interestingly enough, here we acknowledge God's throne, right? This is exactly where God dwelled. When God said, build me a sanctuary so that I may dwell amongst you, that's exactly where he lived, right? His throne. In the book of Revelation chapter 4, it speaks about God's throne room. Then it gives us a pure scenario on how God's throne room is in order and in preparation, right? Here we acknowledge that God's throne room was on or in between the cherubims. That's exactly where God dwelled or lived amongst his children. When you'd walk into the gate towards the eastern gate, God was not there. When you would walk inside the holy place, God was not there. When you would walk inside the most holy place, God was not in any corner of the tabernacle, but he was exactly where the Shekinah glory was actually held. That was the Nawos, the inner shrine of God. Wow, right. Now let's move into symbolism. What does all of these symbolize? What's the significance of all of this? When we gaze upon the sanctuary truth, what does it actually symbolize and indoctrinate us? Remember, we've now digested onto saying, Bible, do you recognize the sanctuary? And the Bible, the old and the new, they said definitely we recognize, right? And we asked the importance. What was the importance? And the two witnesses said the importance of the sanctuary was that a soul was supposed to be cleansed. Their sins through the blood, they were supposed to be forgiven. So the reason and the purpose of the sanctuary was that the soul or the children of Israel around the sanctuary, they were supposed to bring certain lambs or certain animals, livestock that can actually be nullified or able to nullify their sins, and God would accept their pleading of forgiveness. Then God will forgive them, right? God will forgive that individual, right? Now remember, we said that you would, in the sanctuary, you would actually walk where? Towards the east. In other words, the gate of the sanctuary was facing towards the east, right? The east way, as far as the book of Ezekiel and as far as the book of Numbers, saying that the gate of the sanctuary was on the eastern side, right? And there was a whole purpose why on the eastern side. You see, the reason and the purpose of the eastern side was that